I found myself standing at a rundown convenience store, a place where I never thought I'd be, with Jesse by my side. He had the audacity to ask for his share of our meth sales, as if he deserved it after his reckless behavior. I wasn't having any of it. I told him in no uncertain terms that he needed to pay for his carelessness. Still, I couldn't completely abandon the guy, so I reluctantly handed over a small portion of our earnings, $600. Back at home, I was trying to play it cool, cooking dinner and trying to explain away that second phone. I claimed it was just an alarm to remind me to take my meds for an incoming call, but I could feel the skepticism from Skylar. Meanwhile, Jesse was off attending some meeting with his parents and a lawyer. He was facing eviction, given just 72 hours to vacate his house. His parents had run out of patience with him, and I couldn't help but feel a bit of schadenfreude hearing about it. But Jesse, always the smooth talker, tried to spin some wild tale about working for the DEA. His mother saw right through it, though, telling him she found the meth lab he had stashed in the basement. Federal law meant they could have lost the house. I had to hand it to Jesse. He sure knew how to dig his own grave. The next day, Jesse's mom woke him up to the sight of movers taking away his furniture. He was furious, claiming that Aunt Jenny had left him the house fair and square. He was the only one who had taken care of her when she was sick and dying, even when his family had abandoned her, including his own mother. Things escalated, and his mother slapped him, insisting that she just wanted him to turn his life around. I was still trying to mend things with Skylar, but it seemed impossible. Then Jesse called, begging for help with his completely testicular housing situation. But I wasn't interested in his problems. Jesse's attempts to find a place to stay fell flat. His motorcycle and what little he had left were stolen. Desperate, he broke into Clovis's junkyard, ending up in a porta-potty before sneaking into my RV for shelter. As I tried to bond with Junior, giving him driving lessons, Clovis discovered Jesse in the RV and threatened him with a shotgun. Jesse pleaded, claiming he couldn't pay him back right away but promised to make it right. Clovis wasn't interested in excuses. He wanted to sell the RV and Jesse's meth gear. While he made calls to find a buyer, Jesse sneaked back into the RV, started it up, and made a daring escape. I returned home, still attempting to make amends with Skylar. I apologized for my cancer and for not being a better husband. She wasn't having any of it and demanded something that wasn't complete bullshit. I had no idea what she wanted to hear, and she left in frustration. Shortly after, Jesse showed up at my doorstep, and I couldn't contain my anger any longer. I unleashed a tirade, calling him a miserable junkie. He begged for his share of the meth sales, and although I was on edge for my futile attempts with Skylar, I refused, berating him and insulting his intelligence. Our words escalated into a physical brawl, with Jesse gaining the upper hand. He had me pinned down, ready to unleash his fury. But when I dared him to finish the job and end my life, he backed off. We were both exhausted and beaten, so we stumbled back into my house. I reluctantly agreed to split our money evenly, though I couldn't resist keeping a little extra for myself, and offered to make Jesse breakfast. Meanwhile, Skylar drove to a gas station. Despite being pregnant, she lit up a cigarette, not caring about the disapproving looks from those around her. One woman nearby shook her head in judgment, but Skylar shot her a withering glare and continued to smoke, a reflection of the chaos that had engulfed our lives. After a grueling session of chemo, my doctor cautiously suggested that there might be a glimmer of hope in my battle for survival, but any optimism I had vanished when I saw the staggering cost of my treatments, coupled with the hospital bills from my recent fugue state. I felt the weight of financial ruin crushing down on me. My drug money stash, the one thing that had offered me a lifeline, was about to disappear into the abyss as I contemplated paying off these insurmountable debts. I flushed with anxiety as I stared at the dwindling stack of cash. Later, I took a trip to the bathroom, hoping for a moment of solace. What I found was a clogged toilet, stuffed to the brim with a pack of cigarettes. Skylar's defiance, it seemed, knew no bounds. Meanwhile, at the DEA, Hank was informed that the drug trade power vacuum left by Tuco was still very much a problem, and the name Heisenberg was on everyone's lips. He received a promotion to the Tri-State Border Interdiction Task Force, a significant step up, but the pressure weighed heavy. As he stepped into an elevator, the walls closing in, a panic attack gripped him. On the flip side, Jesse returned to Clovis's repair yard, facing the wrath of an initially furious Clovis. But Jesse was armed with the money he owed for services, and even tossed in extra for the damaged fence he left behind during his RV escapade. They settled their score, and Jesse paid Clovis to store the RV in the yard. He also bought himself a new ride, a 1983 Toyota Tercel. With a place to store his RV secured, Jesse began hunting for a new place to live. His search led him to Jane Margolis, a part-time tattoo artist, managing a duplex. Despite having no proof of employment or previous addresses, Jesse managed to charm his way into a deal, explaining how his parents had tossed him out of his previous place. They agreed to a cash arrangement with a stipulation to cover his DBAA clause, don't be an asshole, through increased rent. After our latest cook in the desert, I instructed Jesse to go back to selling smaller quantities of meth, to avoid attracting another Tuco. Jesse, however, wasn't on board with that plan. He believed that with Tuco out of the picture, we could step up to fill the void. We argued, but Jesse reminded me of our original partnership terms. I handled the cook, and he handled the business. He even threatened to go his own way if I didn't agree to his proposal. I had no choice but to relent. Back at his new apartment, Jesse hosted a small housewarming party with his friends Badger, Skinny Pete, and Combo. He also proposed a new business venture. He'd supply them with an ounce of his blue meth at designated drop-off points, and they'd distribute it for $2,500 an ounce. Jesse would take $2,000 from each sale, leaving his buddies with a $500 cut. As for my family, when they visited the Schroeders, Skylar confronted Marie one last time about the stolen tiara. Marie resisted at first, but when Skylar expressed her desire to mend their sisterly bond, Marie broke down in tears and offered an apology. However, things took a darker turn when Skinny Pete was robbed at knife point by a pair of junkies who stole his meth and cash. I confronted Jesse about it, insisting that he couldn't just write off the loss as breakage. I demanded he take action. Back at home, I couldn't ignore Skylar's behavior any longer. I confronted her about the carton of cigarettes I found in the toilet. Skylar brushed off my concerns, claiming she must have suffered a fugue state when she smoked. An argument erupted as she admitted to smoking 3.5 cigarettes and feeling ashamed for doing so while pregnant. I accused her of not being herself, and she retorted with a sharp, "How would you know?" before storming off. That night, I handed Jesse his revolver and told him to do whatever it took to reclaim the stolen money. Meanwhile, Hank's battle with panic attacks and PTSD from his Tuco encounter continued to escalate. After mistaking the popping of bottles from his homemade beer for gunshots, he took Tuco's preserved grill and cast it into a river, a symbolic gesture to rid himself of the haunting memories of that ruthless drug dealer.